Rock is all about rebellion. The Beatles and Rolling Stones started it as a revolution. What's up mga ka-eksena? Welcome to my world, Elmar's World, where we vlog about music and subculture in our local scene here in the Philippines, or what we call OPM. Summers are for music festivals. Without this pandemic, it's really fun to go to Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, but instead of Coachella, it became KINANSELA. Speaking of music festivals like Woodstock and Coachella, we're gonna talk about the Summer of Love.
The Summer of Love.
Now, what is the Summer of Love? Here is a little bit of info. The Summer of Love was a social phenomenon that occurred during the summer of 1967, when as many as 100,000 people, mostly young people sporting hippie fashions of dress and behavior, converged in San Francisco's neighborhood of HAIGHT-ASHBURY. More broadly, the Summer of Love encompassed the hippie music, hallucinogenic drug, anti-war, and free love scene throughout the west coast of the United States, and as far away as New York City. Hippies, sometimes called flower children, were an eclectic group. A few were interested in politics. Others were concerned more with art, music, painting, poetry in particular, or spiritual and meditative practices. The media's reportage of the counterculture included other events in California, such as the Fantasy Fair and Magic Mountain Music Festival in Marin County and the Monterey Pop Festival, both during June 1967. At Monterey, approximately 30,000 people gathered for the first day of the music festival, with the number increasing to 60,000 on the final day. Additionally, media coverage of the Monterey Pop Festival facilitated the Summer of Love, as large numbers of hippies traveled to California to hear favorite bands such as The Who, Grateful Dead, The Animals, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Otis Redding, The BYRDS, and Big Brother and the Holding Company, featuring Janis Joplin. And the most fabulous four-piece hippies of all time, which is yeah, you got it right, the Beatles. I think most of you know who these legendary guys are. My favorite band of all time, and the only rock band I think that I know all the complete names of the members. From John Lennon, to George Harrison, to Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr. These four-piece bands started a rock and roll revolution during the 60s, promoting peace and love as their politics. If you were born in the 60s, you might be aware of their long history, which spans from their fame during that era, the Beatlemania. They have a lot of records, I mean literally a lot, until they released a record entitled Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that has been popular during the Summer of Love, until they broke up and pursued solo careers, and still is famous until now. Now, before we begin, I would just like to tell you that the bands that we are going to talk about in this video are mainly recommendations. Some of them are popular and in my opinion are similar to the aforementioned artists and not being considered rip-offs by any means. Shout out to all the 60s kids, the hippies and non-hippies alike, the fans of the Beatles. My respect to the Beatles. Now, if you listen to the Beatles, you should check out these bands. Former frontman of the band Four of Spades and Formie is considered to be the John Lennon of the group, Unique Salonga. This guy is very popular, especially during his time with the Four of Spades, and still is popular until now, pursuing his solo career, and has released 2 studio albums entitled Grandma and his sophomore album Pangalan under OC Records. This guy is oddly interesting and very experimental when it comes to his music. His first album, Grandma, is an introduction for how unique is the mind of Unique Salonga. Each of the songs in that album is unique in its own way, containing different interesting themes. My favorite so far is the song Cha-Ching. And the song Ozone, which is about the ozone disco fire at Quezon City incident that happened way back 1996. Unique's oddness when it comes to his music is amazing. His sophomore album Pangalan is another interesting album. In this album, Unique shifted in a different direction when it comes to the sound, the themes, and the MVs that is evident on how odd this guy could be. I would just like to give emphasis on a certain track in his second album Pangalan entitled Delubyo. This track have been very controversial and is subject for discussions for hidden subliminal messages and backmasking. In this track, you have gone experimental, or what we can also call avant-garde. This kind of music has also been done by the Beatles on their song Revolution 9 from the White Album. According to John Lennon, he wants to paint a picture of revolution by mixing different sounds as a music. And that, I think, is what Unique has done for his song Delubyo.
All the survivors, and then without warning, I was clinically dead for 16 hours. Show me all the things my heart desired. Let this be the longest happy dream of my life.
The Camerawalls is a band signed to Lily Stars Records, an independent record label which is owned by Clementine. The frontman of the band, a singer/songwriter and music producer, and former Orange and Lemons. Most of the bands signed to Lily Stars Records are indie pop bands. Now, what is indie pop? We already know what indie folk music is in my previous video, but let us just define indie pop. Indie pop is a music genre and subculture that combines guitar pop with DIY ethic, in opposition to the style and tone of mainstream pop music. It originated from British post-punk in the late 1970s and subsequently generated a thriving fanzine, label, and club and gig circuit. Compared to its counterpart indie rock, the genre is more melodic, less abrasive, and relatively angst-free. In later years, the definition of indie pop has bifurcated to also mean bands from unrelated DIY scenes/movements with pop leanings. Subgenres include chamber pop and twee pop. The Camerawalls and Clementine are determined to house the sensibility and aesthetics of indie pop music in the Philippines. Here is a little bit of info about their musical style. The Camerawalls is renowned for incorporating native rondalia, or traditional Philippine folk music instrumentations in the recordings attributed to Clementine's exposure to his father's work as a rondalia instructor. Prominent sections of Bandurria and Octavina can be heard on a number of songs, especially on the remake of Canto de Maria Clara, a Spanish poem written by Filipino writer and national hero Jose Rizal, which appeared on the novel Noli Me Tangere, first published in 1887 in Berlin. Some of the band's influences includes the Beatles, Morrissey, The Smiths, XTC, Belle and Sebastian, Trashcan Sinatras, The Pale Fountains, Terry Hall, and The Lighting Seeds. You should definitely check out these guys. They're Filipino pride. The link is on the description.
Like a dream that we are facing.
a four-piece band from Metro Manila that I also know all the complete names of the members. Zil Benitez, Blaster Salonga, Badjao de Castro, and the former frontman, Unique Salonga. The Forbes Spades skyrocketed their career on the year 2018 with their most popular hit, Mundo. And since then, the four-piece lineup gained a lot of following. They have been famous for their looks, inspired by the 1970s aesthetic. My connotation for them is when the Beatles meets the 1975, for they have an unfinished, unreleased song that has the 1975 vibe. Just to be clear about their musical style, here's a little bit of info. Their musical style has been described as pop funk and funk rock by the local press. Forbes Spades is heavily inspired by 1970s fashion, acts, and sounds. Members of the band have been cited various musical groups and artists as songwriting influences including ABBA, Kings of Leon, Tame Impala, My Chemical Romance, Radiohead, and Jet. The band's genre is a mix of 1970s influenced disco funk, alternative rock, and Manila sound. The band also covered some songs of the Beatles like Something and Hey Jude. Forbes Spades have a debut album entitled Clap, Clap, Clap. I have listened to a lot of the English tracks. Their sound is so vintage and is indeed 1970s inspired, and a mixture of disco funk, alternative rock, and Manila sound.
But it never really mattered. I will always feel the same. Love you forever and forever.
If there is a cover band that skyrocketed their career, that is the Rayo Brothers of Tacloban. This band is inspired by the 1950s to 1970s music of artists like the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Bee Gees, the Dave Clark Five, the Lettermen, Gary Lewis and the Playboys, America, The Ventures, and other artists of that era. As I was reading their biography, this band have been through a lot, from being affected by the Typhoon Haiyan in Tacloban to moving to Manila and continuing their music career. This band grew in popularity when they performed at ABS-CBN Christmas Special on 2013. They are the only performer that received a standing ovation that moment. And since then, the Rayo Brothers have a lot of television appearances. They have a self-titled debut album, Rayo Brothers of Tacloban. Their cover of the song Manila is very Beatles-inspired. Plus the album cover, which is obviously inspired by Abbey Road album of the Beatles.
Dagdag ka lamang sa milyong babae na. Akin ka na lang, iingatan ko ang puso mo.
Kulang kailangan kita. Hindi kumpleto ang buhay ko kapag nawalay ka sa piling ko.
Elmer's World would like to shout out the following. band from Manila, Philippines heavily influenced by the 1960s music, especially the Beatles, which they have done a lot of covers. The Bloomfields. This band have been popular since 2007 with their song rendition of Ale. Have made a lot of TV appearances covering the Beatles songs, and all I can say is the close likeness to them and the Beatles is very evident. For the time being, this band has 4 albums in their discography. They released their self-titled album in 2007 containing 5 originals, and a Christmas album in 2008 entitled Pasko Natin To, and their 3rd album containing all originals from them entitled Hit the Ground Running, and a Drop into the Blue in 2019, their 2nd album containing all originals. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Now if you enjoyed this video, drop a like, comment down for a shoutout, share, follow me on my socials, the link will be down below in the descriptions. Subscribe to my channel and click the bell button for more updates on my upcoming videos. If you want to know more about the music scene here in the Philippines, you can watch my other videos here and here. That's it for this video. I'll see you next time.